Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, early voting is over, the signs are down, and primary day is Tuesday. We're joined today by an astute panel of political insiders. Former Democratic Majority Leader John Hurson, Evan Young, Maryland Young Republican National Committeeman, Maryland political consultant Sean Winkler, and former Democratic Delegate Bill Bronrott. Stay tuned for these topics and more. Early voting ended on Thursday, and the number of people voting in Montgomery County is way up from 4 years ago. Interest across the state was intense on the Democratic side, with the gubernatorial campaigns enticing their supporters to vote early. In Montgomery County, the crowded at-large council race was also a factor. Sean, early voting intrigue was definitely on the Democratic side. I was at multiple early voting sites, and the Republican Party had tables everywhere. But there were no contested races. What's your take from the Republican perspective on early voting?
Sean.
Sorry!
I would say two things that would stand out to me. One, I'd look at how divided Democrats are at the top of the ticket right now.
Ooh.
We may have a nominee on that side that attracts less than 30% of the vote. I think that's something that Republicans have to be encouraged by as Democrats move towards November. I would also be looking at the numbers out of Baltimore County. Are Republicans going to be voting more than Democrats in that county? That is a county that tends to control the state. Very interesting numbers to look forward to.
And also the home of former county executive Kamenetz, who
Absolutely.
was the candidate. Okay, now Evan, from the perspective of the Maryland Republican Party, what are the talking points, or what should the talking points be that the party is pushing out as we get ready for primary day on Tuesday?
Yeah, the talking points heading into Tuesday, in my opinion, are the same ones they should be all the way through to November. Is that it's a very clear choice voters have to make. Today, over 60% say Maryland's heading in the right direction. We have more businesses open than any point in Maryland's history, so it's a clear choice for voters. Continue on going the right direction, as most Marylanders think, or revert back to the 8 years before that, when over 2/3 of Marylanders said we were heading in the wrong direction. Now, for individual candidates, some have been doing this well, some for some reason haven't, but they should be trying to tie themselves and mimic their campaigns as much as possible off Governor Hogan, no matter where the state you're running. We've seen some doing that and some that have just had a strategy that is not going to get them very far.
Okay, so John, the Democrats definitely had the signs and the enthusiastic workers at the early voting site. What's the takeaway from the Democratic perspective regarding early voting here in the county?
I mean, in the county, it was overwhelmingly greater than the past. But I actually agree with Sean. I think statewide, the thing that's important to look at is Baltimore County. I mean, that is going to be kind of the epicenter of the decision making on the governor's race. So I would really look at the numbers in terms of turnout in early voting in Baltimore County. Now, the other thing to remember about early voting is Democrats like early voting a lot more than Republicans do. So you're always going to get a heavier turnout with early voting for Democrats.
And there are literally more Democrats.
And there are more
Republicans.
Democrats. But even so, in terms of the percentage of increases, it was higher this time. But the point is that Democrats kind of like early voting more, because it's kind of the thing that Democrats are really trying to enhance in terms of increasing the number of voting. But look at Baltimore County. I think that's the key to this statewide race.
Okay, same question as Evan. What is the takeaway? What should the talking points be for the Democratic Party as we go into Tuesday?
Well, I think it should be the message that will carry on through November, and that is the madness out of this White House and a Congress that is in a complete stalemate and leaving virtually all the major decisions about education, healthcare, the environment, basically the safety net of a sane civil society, leaving it up to a state and our local communities, our counties and our municipalities. And so the message is who is going to, in effect, save us in the programs, the policies that we most believe in as Democrats from the craziness in Washington with the Trump administration leading the way down
One
the
thing
hole.
I would like to add to what Bill has said, I wonder, and somebody should do, one of these smart think tanks should do, an analysis about, is Maryland more exposed to the national issues because we're so close to the Washington chaos? And I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it would be interesting for somebody to analyze that. It may be true, and it may show up this election.
So were any of you surprised by the large turnout this week at early voting, even with rain and hot weather? And
No,
I
I
think,
wasn't.
you know,
No, I expected it.
and you've got almost every Democrat in the county running for something.
Except
naturally
the
is going to be
Democrats on
turnout.
this panel didn't
Yes.
run for. But the rest of, I think the rest of the Democrats are running for cover rather. But anyway, so I'm going to ask some questions now of all the panel. Okay, so there was lots of news that came from early voting. Signs were ripped off frames. Literature was tossed and destroyed. Allegations were bandied around about bad people. So what was your most notable event or activity of the 8 days of early voting? And we'll start with you.
I would say it was surprising when I was working at early voting locations. The other Democrats and their other tables and volunteers, they were nicer to us than they were to each other. Usually we're taking the brunt of it, but I just love them being so focused on each other to where we go pretty much unnoticed.
Okay. Okay. So Bill, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I spent a good deal of time this past week at early voting locations, and the enthusiasm and the turnout. We heard almost a 100% increase over 4 years ago. That's meaningful. I think that after Tuesday, the Democrats are going to have kind of a head start. Leading into the general election, all the enthusiasm, and a lot of it comes out of, again, the craziness from this Trump administration and a lunatic Republican-controlled Congress. There are people, women in particular, sort of the year of the women, who are looking to turn things around and to get involved.
Your most notable event.
It has to be sample ballots and slating. I mean, a lot of folks from my generation and first-time candidates, that's establishment politics. The Democratic Party should be about openness and access, for new candidates, for new types of candidates to run. But this slate sample ballot politics, really shuts the door on new voices.
Okay. And John.
You obviously weren't part of Dems for the 90s like I was. That's an old throwback to the old days of slate making. The thing that surprised me, and it didn't surprise me, but I have some new friends who have moved into the area, and they were going to early voting, and they were like, what is with the signs? The signs are like overwhelming. It's not been like that at early voting sites before. It's like amazing the number of signs that people can put in front of each other's signs. It was kind of overwhelming.
Know what I found interesting last night is I was at an early voting site and I drove through, and I have never seen such hustling by candidates to get their signs down, because the county threatened that they were going to fine people if they didn't get their signs down.
Yeah.
So the poll wasn't even closed, and candidates themselves were out there pulling up signs.
But isn't the county just finding itself with public financing?
Whatever. Okay, so what makes you hopeful that your party can be successful in November? We'll start with you, John.
Obviously, the national attitudes. I have got to think that even Governor Hogan, who's sitting there with a 65% approval rating, has got to be very concerned about massive Democratic turnout because of what's happening at the national level.
Sean, what do you think?
I think it has to be a mixed message that we're hearing from the Democratic candidates for governor. Is it going to be a health care for all, single payer, state level model from Jealous that's going to risk perhaps, turning off fiscally conservative but socially liberal voters? Is it going to be more of a mainstream Rusher and Baker type message? We don't know what it's going to be. I think Democrats would be wise to take a more mainstream approach, but
Okay,
we'll see.
Bill.
Well-
And let's move quickly because we have a lot more questions.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to come down to the image of children being separated and caged. That image, along with the fact that you have so many federal workers and retirees, people that depend on federal government to function well, that live in Maryland. That could very well sway a lot of people in this race, and there's very good cause for Hogan to be
Avon,
nervous.
Evan, what do you
I'm
think?
confident 'cause we have the most popular governor in the country. He's outpolling all of his potential challengers, and many of those challengers seem to not know who they're running against. They're talking about Donald Trump, not Larry Hogan. That makes me feel pretty good
All
about
right.
November.
So we'll start with you now since
Yes.
the camera's on you. What race, and let's go quickly, what race are you going to be watching on Tuesday night?
On
Let's go.
Tuesday, it'll be both the CD6 Democrat primary and the Republican primary for Senate. There's 14 people running there, and that's really the only
Bill?
contested one.
What's yours?
Congressional District 6, which is part of Montgomery County in Western Maryland. I think this is the fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. Is it going to be multi-million dollars versus somebody who is like Aruna Miller, who I believe is eminently qualified to step in, a woman who can step in, be a part of this delegation that does not have female representation?
Okay. And Sean, what do you think?
I'm
Which
running
one-
up to Baltimore City really quick for District 46. Robin Lewis would be the first African American elected from that district. It's actually a majority white district up there. She's running hard against Nate Lowenthal, who's actually an Obama alumni. He's raised over $400,000 for a delegate race and is pummeling her. Let's go, Robin Lewis.
And this is a Republican
This
race.
is a Democratic primary.
Oh, the Democrat. Oh, okay. I thought we'd hear about a Republican one from you.
Well, you could argue that Nate Lowenthal has kind of taken a Republican platform in that race. Kind of heavy law and order, appealing to a segment of the population that arguably powered Trump, in Dundalk, kind of bleeding into Baltimore City.
and
Interesting.
what race, John, are you going to be
Well, I'm
watching?
going to watch that race now. It sounds fascinating. No, I'm watching the county exec race. I mean, this is going, sea change in Montgomery County politics. Ike Leggett has been there since, the beginning of time. And now to have a new county executive and really have the development versus no development debate taking place between Blair and Elrich.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very fascinated how that comes out.
And don't discount Rosecrans
I'm
with
sorry,
those
I
two
shouldn't.
fights.
I agree.
And the races that there are two races that I'm personally going to be interested. They're both in my home district of 18. One is the Senate race, where one of the candidates has not shown up for 3 forums in a row, is trying to go from delegate to senator. And then in the House race, we have 8 Democrats vying for 3 seats, and a wealth of goodwill, intelligence in
Yeah,
that
they're good-
race.
they're good
So that is going to be interesting. Governor, though, we have a lot to do. You Republicans are going to sit around with nothing to do that night.
they
Okay,
have a lot.
we're going to be back after this short break, so stay tuned. It's always fun on the eve of elections to make predictions. Since there are no surprises on the Republican side, we're going to stick to the Democratic races. And don't tell us what you want to happen. Predict what you believe will happen, okay? We're going to start with county executive, and I'll start with you, Evan. What do you think?
I think it'll be the Democrat nominee would be David Blair.
Bill?
Yeah.
I say it's a toss-up. You have got several who have run countywide numerous times. They've got a base, and you've got Blair, money, and post endorsement. So we'll see what counts.
Sean?
Well,
what do
the
you-
attacks are going against Blair, right? That must tell you something. I mean, was it nearly $500,000 spent against him at this point? So I'll lean Blair.
John, what do you
I
think?
think it's Mark Elrich. People who I have not expected in just conversations on the street all are come up to me. Maybe it's because I'm in Bethesda, but they're all like, "Who's the guy who's against development?" And that's what I'm hearing. just on
Okay,
the street.
so county council at large. John, we have 30, what is it, on the Democratic
let
side,
me see.
33.
Let me go through the 33 people
No, no, no,
who
no,
are
no.
running. No, I think Hans Ringer wins. I think Evan Glass wins. Beyond that, I really don't know.
Okay, what do you think?
I'd echo that and fill in the blanks with Jawando. I think he's built up enough name ID now. What is this, his third race in a row? I also like Jane as a little surprise there.
Jane?
So.
Ashtani.
Yeah.
Ashtani
What
Jane.
about you, Bill? Who do you think?
Well, I also agree that Hans, should get that.
Pulls it out.
I think Jill Ortman-Faust. She's run countywide before. She has name recognition.
She entered the race late, though.
She did, which is a disadvantage, but she's in it. And I think Will Jawando, and I would also say Ashtani Jane has a very good shot at this as well. It's an incredible, talent amongst the 33.
Evan, what do you think?
I think Hans being the only incumbent and having just about every endorsement I can think of, I think he'll hold on to his seat. Beyond that, I'm not even going to pretend to know. You could pick names out of a hat.
Do you even
Dartboard.
have four
Dartboard.
candidates running on the Republican side?
We actually do. I'm not familiar with them. They aren't very
We have a
active
long
from what
ways
I've
till
seen.
November to talk
But
about that.
maybe hopefully they're just
Well, they'll
waiting
get the
till the
nomination.
fall.
Yeah,
They'll win their primaries. That's my prediction.
Okay, so the 6th congressional district. Why don't we start with you, Bill?
Sure. Well, this is Goliath and David and Goliath here. I think it's between Aruna Miller and David Trone.
But just tell us, who do you think is going to make it?
I think in the end it's going to be Aruna.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, as someone who represents scientists, I'm pulling for Aruna, but it would be quite an upset.
John?
Quick little story about the 6th congressional district. Very quick. I talked to all the candidates and I said there's a guy who was Speaker of the House up in Western Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
You need to go talk to him.
Yep.
Who went and talked to him?
I don't know.
Aruna Miller.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think David Trone will go 2 for 2 and not being able to buy primaries, and Aruna will win.
Okay, Governor, very fast. do you
Sharon
think?
Baker, I think, unfortunately.
Again, a toss-up.
Who do you think?
It depends on turnout.
No, prediction. Put your name on the line. What do you think?
I think it's going to be Ben Jealous.
Okay,
I would echo that. A tragedy for the party, but it's been jealous.
John?
I hope it's Baker. I'm afraid these guys are right.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Now, the final question, will the situation at the border with the separation of children from their parents, including children now being housed in Maryland, have an effect on the results Tuesday night? Why don't we start with you, John?
I think the answer is yes, and I think this is how it expresses itself. I think you are going to have a much more aroused Democratic Party, particularly women. And the question is whether or not that extends into November or not. It'll be very interesting to compare the numbers of Democratic women voting in the primary as compared to the previous Democratic primary in the state. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it'll arouse people to get out and say something about politics. I think.
But
that's
do
what's
you
gonna
think that's going to carry over then to...
I don't know, and that's the question. How long does the fallout, how long does it take to reunite these little kids with their parents, and does that continue into November, which I think Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care. He thinks it helps him. So the question is, how does that translate?
And if what you hear in the news is correct, there are children who are in Maryland as young as 18 months old. They can't say who they are, what their name is, where they come from, who their parents
They're
are.
18 months old.
And the
They
fear
can't talk.
is that they've lost track of them. So what do you think about that issue and the elections Tuesday?
I mean, I think any time that the state is turned on to the White House is bad for Republicans and Larry Hogan, right? And it's actually been a while since Trump has made a move, let alone this disgusting.
I'd
that's
call it
kind
a
of caused.
bonehead mood.
Absolutely. But I mean, it was just 2 weeks ago, Republicans were riding high in the congressional ballot heading into this North Korea summit. We have a long way to go to November, but I think this is an issue that could sustain.
Okay, what do you think, Phil?
I think it'll make a difference. Again, bringing folks out in the primary. There's something every day that will bring out Democrats and independents to vote Democrat in November. I'm convinced of that. So it remains to be seen what will happen at the gubernatorial level, but I think at every other level, it will be very impactful.
Right. What do you think?
If we're talking about the results on Tuesday, I don't think it changes the results. It might motivate more people to come out and vote, more Democrats.
What about on the Republican side, though? Do you think they might stay away?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in most of our races, there's nothing to stay away from right now. I am a little concerned, and I'll get into that in my parting shot, about some Republicans that are a little short-sighted maybe about, Governor Hogan bringing the National Guard back. From what I've seen on social media, it made some upset, but it's not worth throwing away 4 more years of a Republican governor over. But what it will do on Tuesday, I think, as far as Democrats go, is which candidate can get their supporters most motivated to come out. Because every Democrat running is going to have virtually the same opinion as far as the immigration issue goes, but who can get their voters to come out and put them over the edge, maybe based off having an emotional response to what they're seeing going on.
Well, it's interesting to watch the candidates on the gubernatorial level. I think Ben Jealous has been the most talking anti-Trump on a wide range. Rusher and Baker doesn't talk about that. He tends to talk about issues. So it'll be interesting to see if that could make a difference based.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
but
No, I think where it could make a difference is in the 6th congressional district. Aruna Miller, an immigrant, an amazing story. It could be a very salient argument for people to go and cast their vote for her in this atmosphere that we are now within.
Is Roger Mano a factor at all, do you think, in the race?
I think he's a little bit of a factor just because he has attracted a lot of labor support. And that actually is very important up in Western Maryland.
Absolutely.
So that I think in terms of getting Democratic votes up in Western Maryland, I don't know, I think in a way he hurts Trone because he's pulling conservative Democrats who are labor people towards him. But honestly, I don't know.
Aruna has the teachers, which is that's gold.
And the thing is that Trone now is close to his record from the last election. He just added $5 more million, so I think he could be close to do it. But Tuesday night is going to be interesting. I'm sorry for the Republicans.
Can I add one thing?
I'm glad there's nothing going on for us.
If both Blair and Trone lose, if those two lose, I think there's a message there to the millionaires.
Okay, we're going to be right back, though, with parting shots. And now with parting shots, John.
Thank you to all the poll workers. You do amazing things volunteering to make our democracy work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's going to be a long day on Tuesday, but you do an amazing job. Republicans, Democrats, thank you.
Evan.
Republicans, do not be ridiculous and short-sighted here. I've seen some people angry because Governor Hogan brought home 4 National Guardsmen, or some people angry because Larry Hogan voted for his dad instead of Donald Trump. If you're a Republican and you're thinking, well, I'd rather have Rashawn Baker be governor because Larry Hogan brought home 4 National Guardsmen, well, then please get out of Maryland before November.
Wow, that's pretty eventful. Sean.
Marylanders, when you're thinking about going down the ocean, make sure it's in Maryland. Let's keep our comptroller happy. Let's flow those dollars to Ocean City, Maryland, not Ocean City, New Jersey.
Now, as a Democrat, I'm sure Peter Franchot loves that you're a Republican saying that. Phil.
I'm going to stay with the election. I'm going to predict first-time candidate Ben Schneider over longtime elected official Sid Katz, District 3, Rockville-Gaithersburg, Leisure World, District 3 Council, and Aruna Miller over Trone, merit over money.
Wow. We'll be back next week. Okay, so primary day is Tuesday, everybody. If you've not done so already, I did. I'm proud to have my I voted sticker on tonight. Please vote. It's an honor, a right, and a duty. Show the country that Maryland is engaged and involved in our precious democracy. I cannot overstate that enough. So it's also important that you join us right here at MCM on Tuesday night from 9 to 11 o'clock for election results from all over Montgomery County. This is going to be the election of our lifetime maybe in Maryland as Marylanders. So on that note, thank you to our panel and for being here tonight. Bill, thanks for being on the first time.
Great to be here.
And please join us each and every week for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. 21 this week, right here. See you next time. I'm Susan Heltemes, and bye for now.